I'm a 28 years old single male who works as a chief editor for an online media company. I'm fairly successful for someone of my age, and that's purely the result of me having worked my butt off since junior high. When I was young, I was constantly reminded of how poor we were by the arguments mom and dad used to have practically every night. It's not that they didn't love each other, but life was terribly difficult and they just couldn't find a way out of the rut. Growing up in that atmosphere, it really lit up a fire under me to do better, to work harder, and to be successful one day. Today, I've achieved the success I was seeking, but it didn't come without sacrifices. I had never had a girlfriend until recently. In all of my life, I kept myself in a constant loop of studying, working, saving, paying back our family debt, and working more. One day, I looked at myself in the mirror, and there stood a man with no style, no charms to speak of. It was the face of a man only a mother could love. Okay, I take that back. I don't look that horrendous, but I'm at best a 5. 5 on a scale of 10 being the best looking. So knowing fully well who I am, it was quite a surprise that Soo-jung from accounting was always flirting with me. I mean, she's probably the most beautiful woman in the entire company. Most men try not to stare at her for obvious reasons, but it's hard. It's so hard not to stare at someone that beautiful. Also, if we want to make the argument that she's after me for the money, well, I'm sorry to say, but there are 2 other single men in the company who are my superiors. And as much as it pains me to say this, they both look better than me. But yeah, by some miracle from the heavens, I ended up dating Soo-jung. The first few dates were more like 2 friends meeting up. I don't know anything about women, and romance even less. Soo-jung was the one who held my hand on our 3rd date, and she was also the one who initiated our first kiss on the 4th date. 3 weeks after we began dating, Soo-jung asked me to invite her over to my place. She simply says she likes to cook for people she loves. So she came over on a Saturday, and we had rather a good time. We cooked, ate, and watched the film. We had a nice conversation, and toward the end of the day, things got a bit more romantic. We were making out on my bed when out of nowhere she told me that she wanted to tie me up. I've never had done the nasty before, but it sounded really hot. So I let her do it and ended up being tied up to my own bed. The thing is, she teased me for what seemed like 20 minutes. Then she got up, put on her clothes, gave me a kiss, and left without saying anything. I thought at first it must be a prank, but no, she didn't come back. She left me tied up to my bed on my own device. It took me 3 hours of pulling, pushing, and contorting to get the knot loose enough to free my right wrist. When I was free, I called Soo-jung and asked what the hell was wrong with her. Her answer? She told me to imagine how euphoric it'll be when we do it for real, now that she's given me a taste of things to come. Like an idiot, I ate it up. The next time she came over, she tied me up again. She told me I would never get to have her unless we did things exactly the way she wanted. That time, she gagged me, tied up all of my limbs, then beat the living daylights out of me using a stick that's got some leather things hanging at the end. We had done it that night, but I wouldn't say that my first time was pleasurable. I had red bruises all over my body and they hurt a lot. I've had the pain for like a week. Our romantic encounters, if you can call it that, continued with Soo-jung upping her weirdness. I always had to be tied up and gagged. She took pleasure out of inflicting pain on me, and she reached ecstasy when she could see the fear in my eyes. I don't know what it was that had me under control, but I couldn't say no to her. Finally, after 2 months, I told her I couldn't see her anymore. Soo-jung looked at me with a smile on her face, then began showing me some photos on her phone. The photos were from that one time when she asked me to hit her with her favorite leather stick. She asked me to take photos while striking her in my bedroom, my own bed, showing my hand doing the deed. The tables had been turned. She had full control of the situation, and there was no way of ending this until she wants to end it herself. I'm still in that terrible relationship, but the end seems to be very close. She's coming over less and less. I've given up on the situation and I'm more like a caged animal. I don't think she takes joy in that. She wants to see some fight, some anger, and more fear for that matter. But I'm no longer able to provide it for her. What kind of luck do you have to be born with to end up with a psycho like Sujung as your first girlfriend? My mistake was to fall for someone solely for their looks, but this punishment is too far severe for a shallow conduct. When she finally moves on to another naive moron, I am never ever going to get myself involved in another romantic relationship. There are too many psychos out there to take another chance. I can't wait to go back to being single again. I was born and raised in a small town where community, tradition, and spirituality are still highly regarded by most everyone. Here, we respect our elders, celebrate our culture, and pray to the gods for their blessings. I love my town and I can't picture myself anywhere else, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect. One of the downsides of being so isolated is the lack of outside intervention. The isolation helps us protect our unique identity, but that has a way of preventing new ideas forming and different opinions being shared. As a result, it is my opinion that we are more prone to believing in superstitions when compared to the folks in the big cities. One of those superstitions is of the ghost of Ichika. It's supposedly the ghost of a town resident back in the early 1900s. Here's the short version of the story. A young fisherman by the name of Haru was married to Ichika, the most beautiful girl in town. Only a few months into their marriage, the couple were pregnant and happy as anyone can be. One day, the young man had to go on an extended fishing trip out in the open sea due to the severe shortage of fish that year. He boarded the fishing vessel with his best friend Kaito and several other fishermen. At the dock, Haru and Ichika shared a tearful goodbye, triggering a wave of jealousy from the other sailors. Nearly a month went by before the fishing vessel returned to the dock in town. Ichika stood on the dock with a bright smile on her face, only to return home with the cold, lifeless body of her husband. Haru had died of drowning. Kaito apologized profusely to Ichika. According to him, he and Haru were drinking one night after nearly everyone had gone to sleep in the lower deck. The two were clowning around on the deck when Haru fell in the ocean and Kaito followed him in. The two friends were too drunk and disoriented to even save themselves. In the end, Kaito was saved by the other sailors, but Haru was already dead by the time they had pulled his body out of the water. The young man's life came to an abrupt and tragic end at the young age of 22. Ichika spent the next few months in deep sorrow, until the time came for her unborn child to see the light of the world. As for Kaito, like the good friend that he was, he stood by her and did everything he could to make Ichika's life better. 3 years after Ichika gave birth to a son, Kaito proposed to her and the two were married soon after. Sadly, the happiness didn't last long. Ichika's son died of an unknown illness before he could even learn to walk properly. Haru's lineage was not to be. Ichika and Kaito overcame the tragedy and the two had a daughter and 3 sons. From the outside, it seemed as though the couple had a good marriage. But in private, Kaito was a jealous and possessive man. With time, Ichika learned the hard way that she must avoid any and all interaction with men other than Kaito, even if that man happened to be an elderly person who could barely walk. As a husband, Kaito couldn't have been more different from Haru. Some 10 years went by and there was this one night when Kaito was carried home by his friends. He was drunk as a skunk. That night, Kaito spilled his guts about the nights of Haru's unfortunate demise. In short, Haru didn't die in an accident. Kaito had thrown him into the ocean after he got him drunk. Perhaps out of selfishness, Kaito thought that his 10 years of marriage with Ichika would be enough to deserve her forgiveness. However, he had underestimated the love Ichika had for Haru. Ichika could never forgive him for so cruelly ending the life of her first love. Perhaps the only man she's truly loved. Ichika went out into the ocean in a small boat that night. It is believed that she threw herself into the ocean to be reunited with the spirit of Haru. They recovered her body the next day, but they say her body was so clean and intact that it seemed as though she was still alive and breathing. Kaito lived the rest of his life as a drunk. They say his children didn't fare much better. All in all, the story is tragic from start to finish, and it's been passed down generation after generation. With good reasons too. You see, most of the stories told in town are stories that have been changed so much over the years. But the story of Ichika, my grandma tells me that it's still told the same way that it was years ago when she was just a child. We all know the reason why. Every single one of the town folks have seen Ichika at least once. She walks around in town at late nights, dragging a large rock roped around her ankle. She doesn't harm anyone. She's always got her head down with one leg dragging behind due to the rock she carries with her. We hear her cry sometimes, and at other times she calls out for Haru. For some reason, the couple have not been reunited even in death. Because of Ichika, people in town tend to believe in almost all of the old stories that have been passed down over the years. I believe in Ichika because I've seen her myself. But as for the others, they are nothing more than old tales told to scare the children to bed. I go to Tokyo once a year to visit my sister and her family. Every time I'm there, I'm stunned at how disconnected people are with each other. No matter how many times I go there, it's a shock each and every time. Everyone's on the phone doing their own thing. Millions of people go about their business like automatons on autopilot. It's no wonder why the only things that survive Tokyo are technology and profit. Not even ghosts venture that human desert. People believe they know everything there's to know about our world, but that confidence is misplaced. In the places where humans and nature are still connected, mystical beings still survive and roam the lands. I don't know if that's good or bad, but nonetheless, Ichika still walks the streets of our town.